Congratulations. You got the job. It involves standing very close to a 6-ton animal with 3-meter tusks and making it angry on purpose, so that the rest of the group can do something useful while it is focused entirely on you. Nobody else volunteered. You will notice, looking around the camp right now, that nobody is making eye contact. That is intentional. That is also how you ended up here. Here's what nobody tells you about mammoth hunting in the Paleolithic. It was not a single job. It was a coordinated system with specific roles: drivers, blockers, spear holders, and the person whose job required being in the most dangerous position possible for the plan to work. The one who drew the animal's attention, the one who made the noise, threw the rocks, waved the torch, and stood there while a creature the size of a house calculated whether it was going to leave or charge. The distractor. 4 parts. How the hunt actually worked, because almost everything you picture is wrong. The specific problem with being the one in front. The moment nobody's strategy accounted for. And the thing that makes this job stranger than it looks, which is that the distractor's effectiveness was measured entirely by whether the animal was looking at them, and not at anything else. If you're new here, subscribe. It costs you nothing, and it genuinely helps. Have you ever wondered what it was actually like to hold the worst position in a mammoth hunt? Doesn't matter. You're already there. The plan. Before we talk about your position, you need to understand why the plan required someone in your position at all. A woolly mammoth weighed between 6 and 10 tons. It stood roughly 3.5 meters at the shoulder, taller than most modern ceilings. Its tusks curved outward and upward and could reach 3 to 4 meters in length, and it knew exactly how to use them. Adult mammoths had no natural predators they could not handle. Cave lions tried occasionally. Wolves went after calves. Against a healthy adult in open ground, nothing in the Pleistocene ecosystem reliably won, including humans. The problem prehistoric hunters faced was not that mammoths were hard to find. It was that they were nearly impossible to kill through the direct confrontation most people imagine when they picture a mammoth hunt. Research from the University of California, Berkeley, published in 2024, found that humans physically cannot throw a stone-tipped spear with enough force to penetrate a mammoth's hide. The shoulder strength just isn't there. A thrown spear might break through the outer layer and then stop, which is worse than useless. It tells the animal something is attacking, without doing enough damage to matter. So, hunters did not throw spears at mammoths from a safe distance. That fantasy belongs to paintings, not archaeology. What they actually did was use the landscape and the animal's own behavior against it. They looked for terrain features, ravines, bog ground, cliff edges, narrow passes, where a mammoth's size became a liability rather than an advantage. They dug traps. At Toltepec, north of Mexico City, archaeologists found 2 circular pits 15,000 years old, 25 meters in diameter, 1.7 meters deep, hand-dug, with the bones of at least 14 mammoths inside. The same site appears to have been used repeatedly for over 500 years. This was not improvised. It was infrastructure. But getting a mammoth into a pit required something first. The animal had to move in the right direction. The herd had to be split, one animal separated from the group, steered without triggering a full stampede in the wrong direction. That is where you come in. Lesser known fact, mammoth herds behaved like modern elephant herds, led by experienced matriarchs, moving as a defensive unit when threatened. Separating one animal from that unit required creating a pressure point, noise, fire, or movement that made the herd close in on one side, pushing the target individual toward the opposite side. The distractor was that pressure point. One person creating enough disruption in exactly the right place to steer a 6-ton animal toward a pit that the rest of the group had spent days digging. The plan was good. Your position in the plan was not. The problem with being in front here is what holding a mammoth's attention actually required. A mammoth's eyesight was roughly comparable to a modern elephant's. Functional, but not its primary sense. What it relied on was smell and hearing, both considerably more sophisticated than its vision. To hold its attention, the distractor had to stay upwind, so the animal could smell them. and had to keep making enough noise or movement to register above the background of the landscape. Too quiet, and the mammoth looked away. Too erratic, and it spooked in the wrong direction, collapsing the entire drive before the trap was in position. This required being close enough for a 6-ton animal to register you as the primary thing demanding its attention. Not at a safe distance, not behind cover, in front, visible, present. Lesser known fact, mammoths had memory and social intelligence comparable to modern elephants. They recognized threat patterns. An animal that had encountered human hunters before would have learned what that behavior looked like. The spread out approach, the noise, the torches. Experienced animals were harder to drive predictably. They might charge instead of retreating. They might turn and face the distractor directly, which changed the nature of the problem in ways that no amount of pre-hunt planning could fully prepare for. Here is the specific detail that puts this in perspective. The 2024 UC Berkeley study on Paleolithic hunting found that the most effective method for killing a mammoth with a Clovis-pointed spear was to brace it in the ground, angled upward, and let the animal's own momentum drive the point into its body. The animal had to be moving toward the spear. The person holding it had to hold their position while it arrived. That technique only worked because something had already pointed the mammoth in the right direction. That something was the distractor. The job required keeping a 6-ton animal's attention without becoming the thing it decided to deal with first. That is a very fine line, and the consequences of misjudging it were not abstract. The moment. Nobody's strategy accounted for. The plan works until the mammoth stops following the plan. Modern research on elephant behavior, the closest behavioral analog to mammoths we have, shows that elephants under threat do not have a single consistent response. Sometimes they retreat, sometimes they mill in confusion, sometimes they mock charge, stopping before contact to reassess, and sometimes they commit. A committed elephant charge reaches roughly 25 kilometers per hour from a standing start. An animal that size at that speed generates momentum that makes strategic positions irrelevant. You are on foot. You have a torch. You do not have a plan for a committed charge. What you do have is fire, and archaeological evidence confirms hunters used it as an active tool in drives, not just for warmth. Controlled burns directed animal movement. Torches pushed herds toward specific terrain. Fire was one of the few things that reliably made a large Pleistocene animal change course. It was also what the distractor carried, and it was the last card available if the mammoth stopped cooperating. The moment nobody's strategy fully accounted for was the moment between the animal deciding to charge and the distractor deciding whether to hold or move. Hold meant staying in position and trusting the fire and the noise to stop the charge before the math became a problem. Move meant abandoning the position and breaking the drive. The animal would refocus, the plan would collapse, and the hunt would have to start over. Lesser known fact, mammoth bones from multiple Paleolithic kill sites show injuries that appear to have been inflicted after the animal was already on the ground. The actual killing blow was delivered once the mammoth was down, brought there by the trap, the terrain, the pit, the exhaustion of being driven. The distractor's job was not to kill it. The job was to get it to the place where it could be killed. Everything before that was what required someone willing to stand in an open field and deliberately get noticed. The mammoth stopped. It looked at you. You are holding the torch. You hold very still. So does it. This is the moment the plan either works or doesn't. Not the spear, not the pit. This. One person in front of something enormous. In the specific kind of standoff where both parties are deciding whether the next action is necessary. You lift the torch slightly, it takes a step back, you take a step toward the trap side, then another. It follows the path of least pressure. The group closes in from behind. The terrain does its job. The hunt happens the way the plan said it would. You did yours. The strange part. Here is the thing about the distractor role that makes it stranger than it first appears. If you did it well, nothing happened. The mammoth moved in the right direction. The drive worked. The group got what they came for. And your contribution to all of that was successfully not getting charged by the animal, whose full attention you were actively trying to capture. There is no visible evidence of the distractor's skill. The spear holder has a weapon with a kill mark on it. The pit diggers have the pit. The people who process the carcass have bones and tools that record exactly what they did. The distractor has the memory of standing in the cold, holding fire, in front of something that weighed 6 tons, and doing exactly what they needed to do precisely well enough that nothing dramatic happened. The whole point of a good distractor was that they didn't appear in the archaeological record at all. Lesser known fact, a single mammoth kill fed roughly 400 people for several weeks. The bones built shelters. More than 70 mammoth bone dwellings have been found across Eastern Europe, with walls of stacked skulls and leg bones, roofs of tusks covered in hide. The tusks were carved into tools, art, and weapons. The fur became clothing. One successful mammoth hunt was not a meal. It was months of survival infrastructure. All of it depended on a coordinated system of roles. None of it happened without the distractor getting the animal to the right place first. Nobody wrote that down. Nobody built a monument to it. The people who ate well that winter didn't think much about the one who held the torch. That's the whole job. That's always been the whole job. You did it. You're done. Go stand near the fire. Someone else already has the best seat. 4 parts. The plan, which was smarter than almost anyone gives it credit for. The problem with being in front, which was exactly what it sounds like, plus a few things it doesn't. The moment nobody's strategy fully accounted for, which was yours to handle alone. And the strange reality of a job where doing it perfectly meant leaving no trace that you did it at all. The Mammoth Distractor didn't volunteer, didn't get paid, didn't get credit, got cold, stood in an exposed position, and held a 6-ton animal's attention long enough for the rest of the operation to function. Somewhere 40,000 years down the line, the people who descended from that group are warm, fed, and sitting inside structures that, at several points in human prehistory, were literally built from the bones of the animal that almost didn't look away in time. You can thank the person who held the torch for that. They would probably appreciate it. Nobody else did at the time. If this video did something for you, watch the next one.